I don't exactly remember all the details of my encounter with the sloth moose. In fact, I'm still not exactly sure how much of it was real and what was just my imagination. But I know that what I saw that day wasn't a dream. It couldn't have been. It was just so real. I feel like not many of you would know what the sloth moose is, and I wouldn't blame you. It's a local legend from the small town that I grew up in about this creature that lives out in the woods. It is said that the creature is extremely isolated, being nocturnal and only coming out to hunt. Any person who dares cross its path is sure to perish and disappear without a trace. That was, of course, until I saw it. I was one of the lucky ones. My story begins when my friend, Mark, asked me if I wanted to come with him and his friends to his cabin for the long weekend. I said yes, mainly because we had all just graduated from high school, and I was on my way to heading to college, so this would be the last time that I would be seeing them for a while. Good. Being that we were already towards the end of summer, it was going to be a bit chillier during the time that we were going, so having the cabin was more ideal than having to lie under a tent. Mark said that he would be driving us out, so we would be able to get to know one another by talking in the car. Excited, I packed my things a few nights before so that I would be ready to go the moment that they arrived. This meant that I couldn't do things like shower, brush my teeth, or change my clothes as they had already been packed into the suitcase. I sent Mark a text telling him that I would be outside shortly and started walking out of my room with my suitcase. Before I left, I took one last look at all of the softball equipment and trophies from my time in high school. I knew that the second that I would get to college, I would finally show myself to the big leagues and prove that I could make it. Your girl's gonna be a star one day, just you wait. As I started walking to the car, Mark rolled down his window and shouted, "You ready to go?" To which I confirmed and put all my things into his trunk. As I sat in the car, Mark greeted me with an open smile that seemed genuine at first. That was, until his pupils shrank off getting a whiff of my awful stench. Still holding his open smile, he introduced me to his two friends who were sitting in the back seat. Directly behind me, we had Kyle, and behind Mark, we had Susan, the bitch. This would be the start to our 6-hour car ride up the mountains and through the thick forests. During the ride, I got to know a little bit about Mark's two friends. First, I guess I should tell you about Mark. Mark is a bit of a jock and a complete bro at heart. He's always trying to find some party to go to where he and his buddies can drink and have a good time. There was also this one time where he was at a party with Stephanie, but we don't talk about that. Kyle had what you might call a bit of a car crash personality. Susan, that bitch, was a bit more carefree and laid back, often finding joy in the little things and hanging out within her little cliques at school. She was a popular girl, and pretty at that. I could see why Mark was friends with her. Sly dog. We drove past all the dense trees and curved roads on our way to the cabin. As we were climbing around the sides of the mountains, we started to see small houses along the side of the road. I found it strange, as I had never imagined that somebody could be living this far out into the woods. The highway that we were driving on was pretty wide, and we never felt unsafe about falling off the sides of the mountain. While we were cruising, Mark noticed that there was a cat sitting on the side of the road out of the way of traffic. It must have come from one of the houses, as we could see its owner starting to walk towards it in order to bring it inside. When he realized what he was looking at, his ears perked up and he immediately slammed his car as far around the road as he could towards the cat's direction and hit it with the most amount of speed possible. After 2 more hours of driving, we finally reached the cabin. It was even bigger than I could have imagined. The cabin had a living room, a kitchen, a bathroom, and 4 bedrooms for each of us. I remember it being so peaceful and beautiful out there. We took all of our belongings out of the trunk and started unpacking in each of our designated spaces. After having driven so long, I had used the bathroom. When I got to the toilet, however, it was full of piss and drowned flies. It must have been there since the year prior, when Mark had come with his family. I immediately ran to grab a straw and began to slurp it all up as an after-drive snack. After about an hour of unpacking, we had all settled into the living room area. The fun was just about to begin. The sun had set, and the night critters began their soothing harmonies. I looked at Kyle, Mark, and Susan, that bitch, sitting on the couches next to the warm fire. We were all talking about the stories that we had, and how excited we were for all the things that we were going to do while we were here. Mark sprang up with joy, heading to the back to prepare our outdoor activities for the night. After he had left, the room fell to complete silence. Nobody said a thing as we stared into the roaring fire, smell masking that of mine as the heat made me drip greasy sweat out of my wiry hair. Mark came back and told us that we were all ready to begin. We headed to the back where we saw a pit that was surrounded by tires for each of us to sit on. We cried tears of joy as the cows began their nightly dance. We were ecstatic at their bodies moving around the circle, their udders flying in the wind. It was one of the happiest memories that I had. The pufferfish blew up and floated by our heads as the cows continued. Each of us took turns letting its spikes poke deep into the cores of our wrist, nailing every nerve and ripping every tendon and muscle as it went through. The ceremony ended, and we all continued laughing through the blistering cold about what we had witnessed. That was when Kyle tapped me on the shoulder. He said that he wanted to walk with me for a minute down one of the nearby trails. Lucky me. I agreed, as the night walk through the woods sounded like a great idea. We waved goodbye to Mark and Susan, that bitch, and walked away from the light towards the pitch blackness of the forest. Kyle talked the whole way through about some stupid shit when we came to a clearing in the woods. The clearing was obviously not natural, as the outlines of a giant circle made of the tree line were clear. We headed towards the center, where we saw some small rocks grouped around a note that was staked into the ground. It looked to be a letter of sorts, being sent to whoever happened to come across it. Right next to it was a used heroin needle that still had the slightest droplet of juice still left in it. We grabbed the needle and headed over to the trash pile that was only a couple of yards away and took some extra fluids from some rotting meat to fill the rest of the syringe. A couple of maggots had also gotten into the syringe, and we could see them squirming around in their new environment. This is art, I thought to myself. Kyle and I both took turns injecting ourselves with the fluid. We could feel the maggots continuing to squirm through the veins in our arms as we headed back. When we had gone to the back of the cabin, we could see that Mark and Susan, that bitch, had already gone back inside. I guess that they had gotten tired of waiting for us in the blistering cold. We got back inside, where we could see the fire now scorching ever higher, and Susan, that bitch, sitting on the couch. She looked at us with wide eyes as she stood up with foam coming out of the sides of her mouth. She kept her gaze directly on us, and whispered, "I miss Stanley. I hope he comes home soon." She was always so silly. We got her to quit her bullshit, and asked her where Mark was. "I don't know," she said with a shrug. I decided that I already had enough fun for the day, and went to my room to relax. As I laid in my dark room with my window open, I could hear a harsh scratching that sliced at the glass. I screamed when I looked at the window and saw that it was a tree. I felt a bit thirsty, so I went over to the kitchen to get myself a glass of water. After drinking my water, I put the glass in the drying spot in the sink, because I'm just a bad bitch. I saw Kyle coming towards me from his room, waving his hand at me to say hi. I looked down for a minute at the glass and, when I had looked back up, Kyle had disappeared. I searched the cabin, but he was nowhere to be found, just vanished out of thin air. That was when Susan, that bitch, tapped me on the shoulder. She said that she wanted to walk with me for a minute down one of the nearby trails. Lucky me. I agreed, as a night walk through the woods sounded like a great idea. As we started walking, I felt a bit of joy as the cool air passed my skin. It felt nice to be out here. As we were walking through the woods, I noticed a metal trash can on the side of the path. I kicked it as loud as I could, and Susan, that bitch, giggled lightly at the excruciatingly loud noise of the trash can falling over. Suddenly, we heard a person yelling at us from one of the nearby apartment complexes. I wondered what her problem was, so I turned to ask Susan, that bitch, about it. When it went to do that, she was also gone. I found myself alone in the middle of the circle again, the blistering cold seeping through the mountains of trash nearby. I turned towards the exit and saw the lights and heard the sirens of police cars coming to the gate. The cold wind continued to blow that night, as the moon was blocked by the highway overpass that ran above me. I could still feel the comfort of the trash can fire that we had lit not too far away from me. The aroma of trash and leaves filling the night air with its horrible scent. I could see the smoke continuing to rise as more of the landfill was beginning to burn. In no time, it would hit the nearby apartment complexes and start a mass fire. I could see the lights of the roaring fire engines getting closer to me still, the noise making the maggot friends inside of me shake and rumble. The flames grew higher into the night air, until, all around me, the cold breeze had been replaced with the warmth of the blaze. The trees had called my name, and I had answered.